Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. On the Logistics of Logistics, I talk to experts in logistics and transportation, warehousing, fulfillment, supply chain, and of course, technology. And during these interviews, I'm always the one asking the dumb questions. I ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. Today's topic is success in retail logistics with my friend Mike Jarrett. Mike is the founder of Jarrett, a leading 3PL that does it all: transportation, logistics, warehousing, technology. They do it all. In the interview, we talked about retail logistics, which is one of the areas where Jarrett specializes. Also, Jarrett is hosting the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit on August 10th. Former OSU football coach Jim Tressel is the keynote speaker, but there's a whole bunch of other industry experts who will be at the event. I will put those in the show notes, and you can also see that at the Jarrett website. So check out the links. That event is held in Orrville, Ohio, which is in the Cleveland, Ohio area. So check out the interview with Mike Jarrett. But before we get to the interview, I want to tell you about my friends over at Tomorrow. Website is tomorrow.io. Tomorrow has developed a weather intelligence and climate security platform that is custom built to help logistics and transportation companies to reduce the impact of weather on their operations. The cost of weather-related accidents, delays, inventory damage, service failures, hours of service problems, they're enormous. But what can we do? We can't change the weather, but we can do a better job of planning around the weather. And that's exactly what they do for you over at Tomorrow.io. They have their own satellites. This is the next generation of weather forecasting. Check them out at Tomorrow.io. I will put a link in the show notes so you can reach out and talk to them. So how's it going, Mike Jarrett?
Doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me today.
I'm very excited to talk to you about this. Retail logistics is a tough area. So I know a lot of people talk about it. Nobody knows it like you. So Mike, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Well, my name is Mike Jarrett. I'm the CEO and founder of Jarrett Companies. We're a supply chain management company. We focus on managed transportation, warehousing, international, and truckload brokerage, as well as fleet services. We're based in Northeast Ohio, a town called Orrville, Ohio. And my background is I started my career at Roadway back in the late 80s, and then moved to Roadway Logistics, which eventually became Caliber Logistics. And then in the early to mid 90s, FedEx Supply Chain purchased Caliber. So I worked there until the late 90s before starting Jarrett Companies in 1999.
Very nice. So I looked at your LinkedIn profile. You just summarized it in 30 seconds, but you have a very extensive career before you started Jarrett. So you started Jarrett in 1999?
Yes.
So what hole did you see in the market? What made you think this is not being done right, or I can do better? What were you thinking in 1999?
Well, the 3PL space has evolved over the years, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was primarily the automotive sector, which I know you have a background in that, Joe. And so, my responsibilities at Caliber Logistics was GM, Ford, and Chrysler were my three largest customers. And so the automotive JIT milk run supply chain approach was really what got 3PL services up and running. So what I saw in the market in the late 90s was a solution, a managed transportation solution that would be more executable in both technology and large and small companies that were not served nearly as much back in those days. So the solution when we launched Jarrett was to take a large 3PL solution-based approach and apply it to the mid-sized to larger companies that were underserved by the main players back then in the 3PL space.
Yep. And we were talking about before we hit record, and I always say automotive is the biggest, baddest supply chain on earth. I'm sure people would argue with that because there's a lot of very complex supply chains out there. But I think it's a great background to have because it is very demanding. Now, by the way, there's people delivering to Walmart like your company today. I guarantee they're saying, no, it's no more demanding than Walmart. When you're working for big operations, the bar is very high. And we'll get more into retail logistics in a minute. But before we do, I know Jackie will kill us if we don't talk about your big event coming up here. So tell us about your big event.
Well, Jackie, our senior marketing manager, you're correct, Joe, will definitely want me and you to talk about that. We have the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit. We're really excited about it. It's on August 10th, and it starts at 8 a.m. That's a Thursday. And we have some really great supply chain leaders, thought leaders in the industry coming to be panelists and speakers. Some of those people that are headliners would be Satish Jindal. He's a thought leader in supply chain for many years now. He's coming to be a speaker as well as a panelist. And then we're going to have some people that are fun to be here and meet and greet with. We've got Dale Earnhardt Jr. coming. We have Dale Jarrett. We have Jim Tressel, the former football coach at Ohio State. He's going to provide a keynote address to the attendees. You know, he's a very inspirational leader. So we're excited about having Jim Tressel there to do that.
I'm a Wolverine. I bleed maize and blue, but I do like Jim Tressel. I will say this: any football coach you hear talk is inspiring. And by the way, I've read. There was a book about Urban Meyer, and I read that book. And there was a book, it's about Jim Harbaugh. I read that book. They're short books, but these guys, there's another one about Nick Saban. These guys, it's very applicable because they are so focused on, we recruit the very best people to get here, and then we train them to keep them here, but we make the best even better. And they talk about process a lot. And I know that's kind of a Nick Saban thing, but they're all in that mode of, I don't think he does anymore, but Jim Harbaugh would grade out every single practice for every single position group. So at the end of the practice, like, here's the best wide receivers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it got to be a little much. I think they scaled back on some of that, but you can't find a great football coach who doesn't have something that's good to say about business.
I totally agree, Joe. I think there's a lot of overlap. And the one thing that you'll hear from great coaches like Jim Tressel is culture.
Yes.
And I think that's what sets us apart from our competition. The culture we've established at Jarrett is second to none. And it starts with people. You know, we're a people-centric, tech-enabled company. So we start with people, and people in the relationships we have with each other as well as our customers establishes a great culture. And I think you'll see that same thing with, you know, sports teams that win year in, year out. It's not the X and O's, it's the culture they've established.
Yeah, you said it's not the X's and O's. I've always heard people say, coaches say, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and Joes.
Yeah, that's right.
How do we register? First off, where is Orrville, Ohio? That's where it's at.
Yeah, Northeast Ohio. Mm-hmm.
So how do I get? That's near Cleveland, right?
Near Cleveland, yeah, about 45 minutes south of Cleveland, more closer to Akron, Canton, if you are familiar with that area. And yeah, you just register. Go to gojarrett.com, and then you'll see a link to register for the Supply Chain Summit. And then we're having a charity event in the afternoon. It's called Racing for a Reason. Again, Dale Earnhardt, Dale Jarrett, Jim Tressel will be there, and we're supporting a local charity called Heartland Education Community. And we're doing an auction, and then we'll have a concert at the end of the evening with Tracy Byrd. He's a Grammy Award-winning country music artist.
Wow, you got something for everybody.
It's going to be a good time. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll put a link in the show notes so anyone who wants to get there can get there. So I'm thinking that's Cleveland's like 4.5 hours from me, 4 hours from me. But if you're in Ohio, it's not far.
Not bad at all. No, it's an easy drive.
And by the way, I was just at TMSA. That's where I met Jackie, or should have met Jackie, but we met after. There was a ton of people from Ohio. You would think TMSA was half Ohio. That's the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association.
Well, Ohio's slogan is the heart of it all. So I would concur. I think Ohio is the heart of it all. So
It's one of those
from a
great.
supply chain standpoint, it's a great place to be. We can reach 80+% of the population in 2 days. So you can't beat Ohio.
Somebody said to me not so long ago, Chicago is the logistics hub of the country, maybe the Midwest now, who knows? But I was like, that may be, but Michigan, Ohio are the supply chain hubs. This is where the supply chain was born, right here. So anyway, let's switch gears. Again, I'll put a link to the summit in the show notes so people can sign up for that. But let's switch gears. Today's topic again is success in retail logistics. So you guys specialize. I know you have multiple specialties, but one of them is retail. So do you work with a number of big retailers? You don't have to mention their names. We all know who they are.
Yeah, we about all of them, Joe, in some form or fashion. Some are part of our managed transportation solution. Others are in our warehousing division. Others are in our truckload brokerage division. So it across the board, really about any major retailer we're working with in some form or fashion.
Yep. And by the way, I've said many, many, many times on the podcast, if you're selling something and if you're listening and you got to make 100 phone calls a day, specialize in something, because people aren't looking for sales guys. They're looking for experts in a space. And it's a lot more compelling to call a retailer and say, hi, this is Mike Jarrett. We work with all the major retailers. And I think we understand the problems you might have better than the next guy. That's a lot more compelling than, hi, I've got to make 100 phone calls today to people I don't know about topics that I know very little about.
Yeah. And, and I think retailers continue to look at multiple ways, multiple channels to distribute their products through e-commerce as an example, and they're looking for warehousing solutions and order fulfillment solutions. So, you have to have the expertise to be in that space. And when we talk about expertise, you have to peel back the onion and get to the nitty gritty of what really matters to the retailers that are in that space. And, we're working with CPG companies that are shipping to retailers. We're working with retailers that are, moving their products through e-commerce channels like Amazon. So you have to have expertise in the day-to-day details of their business. Otherwise, you're not going to stand out from any other competitor.
Yep. And to your point, now we have this omni-channel, and that has some challenges because we don't always know how we're going to sell. So you might sell a lot more at the retail location on Saturday and Sunday, but Monday through Friday, there might be more e-commerce orders. And someone in the background, most likely Jarrett, has to manage that inventory, because carrying excess inventory is the kiss of death. We all worry so much about logistics costs, transportation costs, inventory carrying costs, throwing stuff out because it didn't sell. That is a big cost, and we have to go after that in the retail supply chain.
Yes, definitely.
So are you doing warehousing for these companies and transportation?
Yeah, actually, that is kind of our sweet spot, is providing managed transportation, whether it be LTL, truckload, expedite, small parcel, with CPG and retail companies, combining that with order fulfillment and warehousing services.
Oh boy.
That really is our sweet spot. Because in the retail space, you have to understand, like, for example, Walmart has the on time in full, OTIF is their terminology. If you're not on time and in full, then you're going to get penalties. And so we manage that process for, companies like, Earth Animal, as an example. They're shipping to Walmart. They're a specialty pet food, pet treats company, where we do both managed transportation as well as warehousing order fulfillment. Smucker's is another CPG company that ships to all the major retailers that we're doing those services for, both on the warehousing side as well as the managed transportation. Folgers is another brand that we work with. On the retail side, Bath and Body Works is a retailer we work with in their retail supply chain. And each solution has to be customized for those customers, with ultimately the goal is to handle these responsibilities in a way that not only optimizes their supply chain, but allows them to focus on things that matter most to them.
Yep. And by the way, the retailers are getting very demanding with those CPGs. I think they learned a lot during COVID. One of the things they learned is, in some cases, we have a lot of choices. You go to the grocery store, you go to the certain aisles, and you go, God, there's 25 different kinds of syrup for my pancakes. Do I need 25? And I think what some of the retailers have learned is they sold more when there was less options. And so they started saying, let's cut back on some of this. And by the way, we see lots of retailers like Aldi, Trader Joe's, Costco, fewer SKUs. Why do they have fewer SKUs? By the way, those are all wildly successful companies. They have fewer SKUs because it's less to manage. And I know this, they're looking at OTIF, on time and in full, as one of the ways they grade out their partners in the CPG space. So somebody might say, oh, well, we got dinged. We had to pay a little bit of money, or we got penalized somehow because we were, below our KPI on time and in full. But it might be way more than that. You might lose that shelf space.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that we provide value to the retail and CPG space is consolidation to truckload. Their cost per pound is driven down significantly, and service is improved when you can combine LTL into truckload and send that one full truckload to the distribution center. It's another value-added service that we provide that, when you can do that for that space, it drives down their cost and improves visibility, which is exactly what they're looking for.
Yep. And I'll mention one other OTIF problem. Again, I think that the superficial way to look at OTIF is, as long as we meet the KPI, we're okay. Another way to look at it is if you don't meet the KPI, not only do you upset a customer, you might get a penalty, financial penalty. You might get culled. You might get pushed off the shelf because they say that they're not here a lot of times. But also, if I don't get that syrup in the aisle on time, my customer tries another brand, right? I'm supposed to be with this one, but I picked this one and go, oh, I actually like this one better. So it's not just, hey, did I deliver it on time? Of course, that's important. But the retailers are determining their partners based on these on this performance, and consumers are potentially going to try your competition if you aren't there. By the way, I'm a perfect example. I drink way too much Diet Coke. I used to drink Diet Pepsi, and I worked at a place where they had one of those garbage trucks, we called it, but it was a food truck, would show up, and they were always out of Diet Pepsi. The guy goes, I got Diet Coke. I'm like, I don't want Diet Coke. I want Diet Pepsi. Then I started drinking Diet Coke. I got used to it.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. You switched a brand based on a supply chain inefficiency.
Yes. And it happens.
Pretty common. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think we're going to see some changes in the retail supply chain, because I do know Target and Walmart are now doing some distribution right out of their stores, some e-commerce fulfillment. So are they going to get to the place where they have fewer SKUs on the shelves? I suspect they might. I think they'll have it. It'll just be in the warehouse. They'll say, we'll deliver it to your house tomorrow because we don't have it on the shelf. So managing the omni-channel is going to get harder, not easier.
Totally agree. I think we're heading down that path where decisions are going to be made at the C-suite level, more connected to supply chain than other things that have driven decisions in the past. Because cost comes into play too. Getting your products to the shelves on time and in full at the lowest cost possible, drives decisions more so than they have in the past. Supply chain as a cost of goods continues to go up. So I think it catches the attention of the C-suite more than ever.
Yep. And by the way, before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about small parcel with the challenges with UPS. We averted a strike, which is great. but we also know that we're going to see a big rate increase because their costs went up, which means our costs go up. And getting back to automotive, when you and I both worked in automotive logistics is pretty efficient. We always have full trucks. We have a lot of predictable lanes. I think it's 5 or 10% of revenue is what your logistics spend. When you look at e-commerce, very different. The logistics spend is like 20-25% of that e-commerce shipment. So it is, not only is that a cost, but it's also going to determine whether you make those sales or not to the end consumer.
Yeah, I think the recent contract that UPS signed with the Teamsters is going to necessitate an increase in that space. And we know because it's a duopoly, FedEx Ground will match the rate increases that UPS will be needing to implement. So I think it all will, again, drive more decisions on, on the supply chain decision makers on how do we move our goods to the end user in the most cost-effective way and still meeting the customer experience requirements. And I think you're gonna see some shifting as a result because there is going to be some large increases coming on the parcel side.
Yeah, and you mentioned we have UPS and FedEx, and it feels like that's the only game in town. And by the way, I also understand. I have not read the contract. Maybe you have, but the UPS won't be utilizing the Postal Service for the final mile.
That's correct. That's been restricted by a certain percentage. I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but yes, that was part of the contract.
So that means the cost is, well, the final mile is the most expensive piece. And now all of a sudden we're switching from kind of a known entity, which is the Postal Service, to, a more expensive resource. I'm guessing the Teamsters are more expensive than the Postal Service.
Yeah, I would assume so. But yeah, I think a lot will have to shake out there, Joe, on what's happening there.
Getting back to it, I know when we talk about small parcel, I told you just yesterday, I interviewed the guys from Sendle, and they aren't quite there yet as that, they're at FedEx, UPS level, but they are an option. Tusk Logistics has been on my podcast. They are an option. These are technology company. I won't say all technology companies, but they've used technology to connect a lot of the great regional carriers. So I think we're going to see a lot of interest in getting a third, fourth, fifth option for people who ship small parcel like you.
Well, I think so. And we can't forget about Amazon.
Oh,
Amazon
yeah.
They continue to build out their network with warehouses and a contractor model. It's been very effective. I think you'll see them step that up as well. So there's a lot of things I think will take place over the next 5 to 10 years within the parcel space. And I think it's another reason why, C-level people within large and small companies should take a look at supply chain and how it impacts their overall cost of doing business.
Yep, absolutely. So I know you work with a lot of these retailers, and I'm wondering, I know we're post-COVID now, hallelujah. For a long time, I was afraid to say it, but I'm confident now we're post-COVID. I'm sure that was a painful time for you. You got a lot of employees, a lot of locations. What were some of the takeaways? What were some of the things you learned about retail the hard way or the easy way during COVID?
Well, first of all, expect the unexpected. That was the first thing. That was unprecedented times. And I think that, each company that we worked with handled COVID in their own way. We tried to keep our teams together, obviously, as long as we could. And then we sent people home. We brought people back as quickly as we could because culture is so important to who we are as a company. And I feel that you need to be together in order to maintain relationships, which is the heart of culture. So that allowed us, but obviously technology was huge. Our technology played a big role in maintaining service levels with our customers throughout the COVID timeframe. I think that what we learned is that you've got to be flexible with situations that come up on the fly, and that's one of the things that we're really good at. a family-owned company, which means that we can adjust and be flexible with our customers. But we're a large company, so we have the broad base of services to be able to accommodate whatever a customer needs in the supply chain space. So we're very unique in that regard, and it makes us different from our competition. I think family owned is a competitive advantage for us, allows us to be flexible, but we're also a very large third party logistics company in many different verticals, so we can accommodate whatever the customer needs.
Yep. So I want to take a quick time out to talk to small parcel shippers. I'm talking to you e-commerce sellers and the 3PLs who serve them. I'm talking to you retailers. We got some great news this week. UPS is not going on strike, which is fantastic news for all of us, for the economy. The bad news is there's going to be a double-digit rate hike, somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 12%, according to experts. I just saw an article in FreightWaves about it. But what choice do you have? UPS and FedEx are the only game in town until now. Tusk Logistics, that's TUSK Logistics, is a national network of the best regional small parcel carriers. Yes, I said national. Tusk will save you money, up to 40% in some cases. They have great pre-negotiated rates with the best small parcel carriers in the country. Tusk will also provide you proactive support and easy implementation because it's probably already integrated with your technology. Check them out at tusklogistics.com. And when you get there, click the Get Started button. Do yourself a big favor, save some money, go to Tusk Logistics. So getting back to it, one of the things that's come up quite a bit on my podcast lately is we saw a growth in e-commerce, especially during COVID. A lot of those companies have kind of fallen back from their highs. And as a result of all those e-commerce companies growing, we saw a ton of logistics and fulfillment companies pop up. And a lot of them venture capital backed. And when you take VC money, you got to grow. And they said yes to a lot of business that they weren't wild about later on. And I've been hearing a lot of people say, yeah, this wasn't a good fit. So you have a lot of companies that were focused very much on growing really rapidly and taking on e-commerce business, but not necessarily traditional warehousing. So, Mike, walk us through what you do with your clients day to day, your retail clients. I know there's a big order, but pick any customer, you don't have to say their name, and walk us through what you do for them on a daily basis.
Well, each customer is pretty similar in the first step, and that is we connect through either API connectivity with their ERP system so that their orders can come to us into our TMS platform, which once they hit our TMS platform, which is called JShip, it allows our logistics coordinators who are working in that CAT team, that customer account team for that customer, to begin assigning the lowest cost, best service carrier, consolidating orders into truckload. Once those orders are assigned and consolidated, then we're reaching out again through API connectivity with our partner carriers to book those shipments within our customer's ERP system. So the customer then is provided with bills of lading and other documentation, basically sets the shipment up in their system. So it's ready for the warehouse location or the shipping location to prepare the order to ship. We're also, with most of our CPG and retail customers, doing warehouse order fulfillment for them. That allows us to use our warehouse management system. It's a cloud-based WMS that's connected to our transportation management system, which makes it very seamless for us to be able to combine orders, route shipments on the lowest cost, best service carrier, and then assign those shipments in our own warehouse location. And then we'll, of course, send EDI advanced ship notices to our customers, letting them know that their shipments are on the way. We're shipping shipments to B2B customers, brick and mortar customers that are using a distribution or dealer network. We're also doing direct to consumer, which would be shipments that are being sold on our customers' websites or through Amazon.
So does that mean that I'm assuming, so when you say ship, you're shipping from one of your warehouse locations, you have those all over the country, and you're shipping it from your warehousing company, your warehouse location to their retail outlet?
That is correct. Yeah, if it's a Bath and Body Works example, we are handling vendor shipments for Bath and Body Works through our managed transportation solution. If it's, say, an Earth Animal shipment, which is a pet treat company that has dealers all over the country, we're shipping B2B to their dealers. We're also shipping to Amazon for them, Chewy.com, and then we're also handling all of their order fulfillment for their web orders or direct to consumer. So it does vary depending on what channel that customer is in from a supply chain standpoint.
So you have within your warehouses across the country, you have inventory for a lot of your customers in there that has to be managed. And I'm curious, like, is that all based on kind of past sales performance that they deliver that to your warehouse? Like, we think we'll sell this much of this product? Because I know a lot of the stuff's coming from Asia, not all the food, of course, but a lot of the stuff you would come from Asia, and it's got to be brought over the ocean and put in some warehouse somewhere to wait for sale, right?
Absolutely. And, inventory management is a key strategy for our customers. And we play in that environment for them with our warehouse management system. It allows them to have visibility to orders in a real-time basis. What orders are picked real time. It's updated within 30 seconds of every time we scan orders with our handheld. So customers know what their inventory looks like, how quickly certain SKUs are moving out of the warehouse, so they know to replenish inventory on a timely basis.
Yeah, so in the past, not so long ago, when you and I started probably in this business, you would look at a warehouse, and when you walked through a warehouse, it always seemed like half the stuff was never going to be sold. It was sent to that warehouse to die. That we recognize is wildly expensive. First off, they got to pay for it to sit on your shelf, whether it's going to sell or not. So I think more and more companies are looking to data to say, how do we get the right SKUs in the right warehouses so we can sell them? And by the way, all the consumers expect same day, next day, which means your warehouse can't be on the other side of the country. It has to be in a metro area close to that person.
Very much so. And that's why we have, of course, our own warehouses that we own and operate, which are here in Orrville. We're adding on to our warehouses here in Orrville to have around 400,000 square feet of warehouse space. And then we have another warehouse in eastern Pennsylvania, which services that eastern seaboard. But we also have partnerships that provide us with 45 million square feet of space throughout the country. And those partnerships will allow us to move into markets for our customers on an as-needed basis.
Yeah. And by the way, I had Summit Hogue on my podcast not so long ago. He is warehousing real estate. And one of the things I think is very risky, you mentioned you have partners. Warehousing has become kind of a dangerous business in some regards, because you go buy these warehouses in certain areas or lease space at them, and things change very rapid. Like in Reno, I have a friend who was in Reno, and he said the salaries skyrocketed and the area grew, and all of a sudden everybody who wanted to work at the warehouse was driving 45 minutes to get there. So being nimble, being able to get in and out of relationships now is pretty darn important, because, and we also know this during COVID, we have to figure out how to get warehouse workers and make it a good job, because it's a tough job, but we need those people in the building. Otherwise, none of this works.
Absolutely. I think flexibility is the key there, Joe, on the warehousing side, because like you said, things change quickly. And, there's challenges with labor, and there's challenges with finding the right space to hit the density for where your customers are located. So by having partnerships with these warehousing firms allows us that flexibility to flex up or flex down depending on what our customer needs are.
Yep. And by the way, I've also heard, and maybe you know this also, that in the past, if a company said we need 1,000,000 square feet, let's just say a huge company, need 1,000,000 square feet for the holiday rush. But usually we only need 500,000 square feet. In the past, they might have kept 1,000,000 square feet all year long. Now they're more likely to say, we will have this 500,000. And then when we need to flex up, as you said, we will flex up. And in January, flex back down again.
Yeah, definitely. And because the cost structure has gone up significantly. And depending on what market you're in, what we're seeing is, along the eastern seaboard, the cost structure has gone up much faster than other parts of the country. And then we're seeing that it might be better from a western distribution center to be more in Salt Lake as opposed to Reno or Los Angeles because of the cost structure.
But that's, it's crazy you should say that because, and I know you're right, a few years ago, somebody said, probably more than a few years ago, said, we're in Reno because Reno is same day for parcel, same day to LA. LA is also same day for LA. So we got this much cheaper workforce in Reno. Well, that was great until Tesla and everybody else showed up in Reno, and all of a sudden it became a boom town and salaries doubled there. So you have to figure out, well, how do I get out of this?
Well, yeah, and it's more labor than anything else. It's finding people to fill those positions, and Reno is it's really hard to find people. LA is really hard to find people because it's over the years been a dense market for distribution. Salt Lake City is kind of the new frontier on the West Coast, and so that's why we've got partners there that we're working with for our customers.
We've seen a massive migration of people and business move from the Northeast to the Southeast. We're still in the middle here, Mike. So you're in the
That's right.
But we've seen it, and these are normal. But we've also seen a lot of people leave California, get to Utah, Montana, New Mexico, Wyoming, places that were seemingly empty not so long ago.
Yeah. And the work from home hybrid approach has, I think, been conducive to those relocations. And, we have to admit, Salt Lake City, Denver area, Montana, those are scenic areas. And if you can work in a home environment and live in those areas, I think people will choose that in a lot of cases.
Yep. So getting back to retail logistics for a second. So you're working with a lot of large retailers, and I'm assuming some of it comes from Asia. How do you get stuff from Asia?
We have an international freight forwarding division as well. So we handle imports and exports for our customers. What is a really excellent way to provide our customers with visibility on both imports and exports is we utilize FourKites for our platform for tracking shipments. So FourKites will ping our TMS platform every 30 seconds with an update on where their container is at.
Whoa, love it.
Separates us from a lot of the freight forwarders out there. And, because a lot of especially with all the disruptions that have occurred in international over the last few years, customers want to know where their containers are at, and so they can plan accordingly. The other thing we do that's different from our competition is we'll bring the containers into our warehouses and we'll do quality control. We'll strip the container, put the container goods into our warehouse, and then perform the order fulfillment services on those products for the customer. So it's a soup to nuts approach on international, where products coming inbound from, say, Asia or from European countries, we can handle any of those containers for them, bring it into our warehouses. They can pick Long Beach if they choose. We know we've had a lot of issues with Long Beach, so we're seeing more and more containers coming in through Norfolk, Charleston, and other East Coast ports in order to get their products quicker and without any kind of issues that are going on the West Coast.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're seeing a migration of port traffic to not only to the East Coast, but also the Gulf. I think one of the fastest growing is in Savannah, where we were all just in Savannah for TMSA. And I'll say this because this is how I look at the world. I look at the world from order to cash, right? From the time I get to the order to the time I get my money, how long is it? And for a lot of complex supply chains, maybe for a lot of the retailers you work with, that could be 16 weeks from the time I get the order I might need to put it on a shelf, and that might not be the end customer order. But a lot of times when we look at our logistics and supply chain, we have a whole bunch of handoffs. So I have my freight forwarder hands it off to a warehouse on the West Coast, and then a trucking company picks it up, and they're all different companies, and there's not one technology. And ideally, you can get connected on the technology, but I like that you do it all. There's one throat to choke, or more likely, one back to pat.
Well, and I think what we're seeing is a lot of customers want to single source the international flow of goods, because you have a lot of moving parts. You've got agents you work with in Asia and Europe, and then you have the container companies that you have to work with on drayage and chassis. Of course, you have the steamship lines. And then once it receives here in the port of entry, whether it's West Coast, East Coast, or even the Gulf Coast, you now have to work with, the unloading at the docks, as well as getting the container onto your chassis for your drayage carrier. So we handle that for the customers so that they don't have to worry about it. And we're providing that visibility all along the way for them.
I love it. I love it. And again, before we hit record, I was talking to you about, obviously, over-the-road transportation is super important. But we're also seeing the importance of warehousing and fulfillment. You can't do omni-channel with just over-the-road transportation. We need the warehousing and fulfillment. We also need the freight forwarding. And again, it has to be one integrated system. And I know that the nature of our industry is to have partnerships. And I think that will continue to be the way, but somehow, some way we have to get tighter and tighter, because we all know during COVID how bad it was with the ports. It's one thing not to get unloaded and not to get your stuff. It's a whole nother thing when you can't say, I have no idea where that container is. And we had a lot of that going on.
Yeah, that's right. And so visibility plays a key role in that. And that's where you have to have a technology infrastructure, which is what we have, because you can execute operationally, but if you don't have the technology to provide visibility to the customers, they're really going to be left in the dark, and that doesn't fly anymore. I think that you have to have a technology platform that's robust and provides customers with visibility. It's not rocket science. You want to provide the customers with the status of their shipments, where it's at, and the ETA on it. And if it's going to be delayed, proactively communicate that to the customer so they can plan accordingly. We use a control tower. We call it our routing center to do that. Each of our customers are assigned to a customer account team. The customer account teams have 6 to 8 people in them, and they're constantly communicating with customers on where their shipments are at and what their ETA is, if it changes, with what the new ETA is. Those things are just fundamental in providing a world-class service to your customer.
Yep. I think the actionable insights, and by the way, we also know this. Amazon's always the big elephant in the room. Amazon told a lot of companies, you're not the right kind of customer for us, and they priced them out of their marketplace, which is fine, right? They did that with data. They were able to say, we are not the right fit for this customer. So they pushed some people out. And other customers said, we want to better control the customer experience. So I see warehousing and fulfillment companies like yours that kind of do all growing into that space for retailers and for the CPGs that say, yeah, we can do it all. We can give you that Amazon-like experience, and we can give you the additional control you want over your brand, because we all love Amazon. But when you go on Amazon and say, I'd like to buy these kind of shoes, they'll go, are you sure you don't want one of these other 60 pairs of shoes? You're like, No, I want those shoes. That is not what I would want if I was selling Joe's shoes. I would not want, hey, I'll show you every shoe under the sun other than Joe's for a minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah. And I think what it comes down to is, do you have a culture in your organization where you're going to take care of the customer? As a family owned company, we have that. We have the scalability of a large 3PL, but what backs up that scalability is a family owned culture where our people truly care about the customers and they care about each other. I think that makes us different from our competition.
Yep. And this has been a recurrent theme about warehousing and fulfillment. That work is hard work. You have to, there has to be some meaning beyond I'm getting a paycheck. If you're not appreciated, if you don't feel like you're part of something, if you just say, I'm just a strong back to these guys, I'm just somebody who can walk around a warehouse all day, that's not the way you keep people, especially in this market. It's going to get harder and harder to keep people. So if you can say, I'm part of something and they care about me and I'm going to have some opportunities to grow here, that matters.
It really does, Joe. It's a great lead into, one of our customers where we're shipping their products, many SKUs into Home Depot and Lowe's. They moved their warehouse order fulfillment from Atlanta, Georgia to our facility here in Orrville, Ohio, because they kept running into problems with turnover with their current warehouse provider or the previous one. And so what we're able to demonstrate, because of the type of culture we have with taking care of our employees, there's more stability, there's less turnover, and the work ethic is different in our environment, which creates faster orders going out the door, fewer errors, fewer misships, better communication. And those things are big. That's a big deal. I think little things with poor performance due to in turnover can really cause problems for retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've experienced this in the past with warehousing and fulfillment companies. I was advising a shipper on a warehousing company they were using. They had high turnover, and you kind of just got a sense. You walked through their facility; it was a little sloppy. You could just see there's no pride in the facility, and it's we're going to have a big shortage of people here very soon as the baby boomers continue to retire. We're going to be 400,000 people short. There's 400,000 fewer people in this next generation. How we deal with that is going to have to be beyond technology. We're going to, of course, use technology and automation, but it has to be something more, because people are not going to go to a job when they have other options that doesn't treat them well.
Totally agree, Joe. And one of the things that we really focus on is providing a platform for our employees to really get fulfillment out of their job. And I think that's the difference maker in recruiting and retaining the best people. When you make an impact, you feel you're making an impact in your organization. People care about what you're doing. They recognize you for doing a job well done. That provides that employee with fulfillment in their job. And I think to me, that's a building block of a winning culture.
Yep, I agree. So, want to wrap this bad boy up? Mike Jarrett, give us your final thoughts on this topic. What does it take to be successful in retail logistics?
Well, I'll start with people. As I have throughout this podcast, I think you have to be a people-centric, tech-enabled logistics company in today's world. So it takes people. At the end of the day, supply chain is about relationships. And so I think you need to have the right people on the right seats on the bus and have a culture that wins the day for you, your customers, and all of your employees. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is I think you have to have a robust technology platform that provides customers with real-time information, real data, advanced analytics, and visibility to their shipments. And then along with that, I think the expertise in the retail and CPG market. As we talked about earlier, it's a very unique space for supply chain. You know, the on-time in full, the chargebacks, the penalties that retailers will push back to manufacturers on, all because the execution isn't there. You have to have that expertise in that space. And last but not least, I think you have to have a company that's flexible. And I think our flexibility in working with our customers in this space, because we're family owned, gives us an advantage over our competition.
I love it. I love it. So, Mike, I like to interview smart, interesting people like you who are killing it in the space. Who else should I interview?
Well, we've talked a lot about what's going on in the industry, and we could probably spend another hour talking about Yellow and that situation. We briefly talked about parcel. You know, UPS did ratify, or their rank and file looks like they're going to ratify the new contract. I think there's a lot of disruptions that's taking place in the parcel world. So, you know, with e-commerce continuing to grow at double-digit clip, I would recommend you talk to Berkeley Stafford. He's a CEO of TransImpact. TransImpact is one of our partners on the parcel side, and they're very smart and fast-growing company focused on the parcel side of the business.
I love it. I will follow up with Berkeley Stafford. If I can't get him on LinkedIn, maybe you can send me his email. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll put a link to your website and any other links you and Jackie give me. I'll put those in the show notes. What conferences besides the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit will you guys be at in the coming months?
Well, we're gonna be at the CSCMP conference. It's in Orlando this year.
Nice.
It's late September, early October. That's one of my favorite conferences to go to. It goes back many years of, I think, being one of the foremost thought leader and supply chain professional conferences. So we'll definitely be there. But I do want to plug the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit again, Joe. It's on August 10th. Starts at 8 a.m. here in Orrville, Ohio. As I mentioned, it's going to have Jim Tressel, going to have Dale Earnhardt Jr., Dale Jarrett here. And then we also, we have a lot of supply chain thought leaders. We're going to have Todd Pullen, the VP of Pricing at Old Dominion. We're going to have Keith Jindell. We're going to have a number of other thought leaders in supply chain. I think it'll be a great event. So hopefully some of the people out there listening to this podcast are able to make it. Go to gojarrett.com to register.
Yep. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can reach out and connect with and register for that. Does it cost anything?
No, it does not cost anything.
There you go. You go. See, guys, there's a lot of expensive places to go. This is free. And by the way, are you related to Dale Jarrett or just the same name?
I'm not. He is our spokesperson. We sponsor NASCAR through Dale Jr.'s motorsports team called Junior Motorsports. Dale Jarrett is one of our spokespersons, but we're not related. Most people ask that question, and we've looked at our family heritage on both sides, and we have not made the connection.
Oh, yeah.
But he's a great guy, though. He's a great spokesperson. He's a high character, high integrity person who is a NASCAR Hall of Famer. So we're glad to have him on our team.
Excellent. So again, I'll put all those links in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. And Mike, thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Joe.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.